Welcome to Past Your Bedtime. My name's Bev. Have you ever wondered what the ideal thickness of tender stem broccoli is? Have you ever even stopped to think that somewhere, someone is considering this in order to influence your buying habits? Every year, tens of millions of pounds are spent on researching food production, farming practices, and opinions that either support or contest changes in the way food is created and supplied, marketed, and consumed by all of us. My guest today is Clare Otridge, Director of Grounded Research, a market research agency specialising in food and agriculture. I love chatting to Clare and reading her articles. Apart from anything else, her boundless enthusiasm for farming and research is contagious. But also, with a postgrad diploma in behavioural science, she's constantly tapping into what it is that people say and do in the real world, connecting the voices of farmers, consumers and supply chain stakeholders with the organisations that are shaping the food of the future. Being a farmer's daughter also helps, as she possesses instant credibility, and in between stories of life on the farm as a kid, it's clear that she's rarely thinking about anything other than a conversation or an anecdote or a good book to recommend for anyone looking to learn. With conversations gaining traction around farm gate prices, ultra-processed food, imports and heightened consumer awareness, among other things, I predict a busy year for Clare and the team, and, I suspect, no shortage of data upon which to ruminate. Hi Clare, it's lovely to speak to you. I'm really interested to hear more about Grounded Research, the work that you've been doing. What have you been working on through this year?
Gosh, I should have had my project list up in front of me. It's been the intersection of environment, food and agriculture, and how those three sides of the triangle all, I liken it. So when I was in sort of management consultancy world, everyone talked about the triangle of scope, and it's how you've got time. What is it now? It's time, money and output. And it's kind of, you can't pull one and increase one without impacting the other. And I think that works really nicely as a metaphor with food, farming, the environment. You can't push farming hard and still expect the environment to be stable and deliver healthy, sustainable foods. You can't, you sort of, if you tweak one, the other one's either got to come in or expand out. And I think that's where, and if I'm honest, that's where my real interest sits, because I think that's what the future of farming and agriculture is going to be about: how we farm, what we produce, and what the impact is.
Are you called upon to identify what those issues are in each of those elements, or do you get a broader brief? What sort of client requests do you get?
It's not so much the scientific side. There's other organisations that deal with that are certainly more scientific and soily in agronomy than I am. Where we're looking is really the human and the behaviour side, and what people are thinking and feeling and how that impacts what they're doing. So if I look through some of the jobs we've done this year, that's things like, how are farmers adopting technology and what are some of the barriers, not necessarily in mindset, but also the physical barriers around what they can realistically implement on farms. The want might be there, but the financial ability to afford it might not be. And similarly, they might be able to afford it, but they can't see the benefit to want to pay for robots or whatever. And it can also then be right through to doing work around what the audit burden in red tractor might be, and how farmers perceive it, what the reality looks like, where are the real pinch points that can be addressed quite easily with some changes. When you understand what the experience is on farm, it's very easy to make decisions when you're sat behind a desk and in front of your inbox, but you need to understand what's actually happening on farm. And that's where we come in, and we understand that sort of the data side as well as the lived experience and what's called the qualitative opinions of farmers. And I love having interviews with farmers. I find out so much and I learn so much from them, and they are, without a shadow of a doubt, the most resilient, interesting people to speak to.
Yeah, I can second that from my limited experience of it this year. Everybody said to me, well, farmers love to talk. And I think that's a sweeping generalisation. I think if, from my experience so far, if you can get them in the right moment and able to share their experience and sit back and absorb it, then yes, they do love to talk and yeah, I love to hear the different examples and stories, and that's what creating this podcast was all about, to tap into those stories. You're saying about the things like the red tractor regulations or requirements. I was talking to somebody the other day about organic farming, and I remember when organic produce sort of became popularized in the supermarkets. And at the time, and I'm thinking it would have been early 80s. And of course, it had its moment then, but the pushback from consumers or my parents was, the price. Organic's still around, it's still a thing. I'm not sure. I wrote a piece a while ago about how can apples that come from Chile be still packaged up as being organic. I get it, it's not the same thing, but if my principles are I'm going to buy organic because it's better quality, how do I marry that up with the fact that it's been shipped halfway around the world and it lacks in flavour, notwithstanding the fact that there are hundreds of other apple varieties grown in the UK that we could have. Do you get asked to look at those sorts of things with farmers?
Oh, so interestingly, that wasn't one we did with farmers. So we work, and you probably wouldn't know if you just looked at 5 Bar Gate, but Grounded Research, which is the agency that sits behind 5 Bar Gate, works across the whole supply chain. So we've got 5 Bar Gate, which is our community of farmers and people that work in agriculture. We've got another community called Crop to Shop, which is everybody that goes from the farm gate right up to the shop floor. And then we've got Insight with Bite, which is our community of conscious consumers. And we don't pay them for taking part in research. They're there because they really care about the sort of the food they eat, where it comes from and how it's produced. We have other ways of incentivizing them to take part in research, but it means that you get a very different perspective from kind of the standard YouGov samples, because a lot of them they get paid 50p a survey, and they do about 20 surveys a day. So it gives a different profile. And I say to some of the brands we work with, that profile is a lot more aligned to the customers that they're trying to attract, because a lot of them are the sort of the premium products, the stuff that's produced, artisan type. We've actually worked with a company called Artisan, who produce a type of carbonated tonic water. We work with Holy Moly, we work with Waitrose, Dalesfords, Dyson Farming on taste testing some of their products. So interestingly, where you said about the British and organic, we did a big consumer research piece on the say-do gap between what consumers say they want versus what they actually do across British and organic produce. And the takeout that I found really interesting, it's a 600-page report, and if you want a summary, there's one on the website, because I thought no one's going to read this. It's a big DEFRA peer-reviewed study.
I've got a long flight coming up. I'm saving all these things, so don't worry.
I think I read it about 20 times to try and get it perfect, and I was sick to the back teeth of it. Words lost meaning to me after reviewing that several iterations. But what it found is price and availability aren't the barriers we perceive them to be. Yes, price more so in a cost of living crisis, et cetera, but it's really the big driver of buying organic is what you perceive your peers to be doing. It's what people around you are doing. And if you think that your peer group are all buying organic, you're more likely to buy organic. And what I found even more interesting was that peer pressure, keeping up with the Joneses mentality, is more important than knowledge and knowing what organic means and what that means for you. It really is. We're all sheep.
Well, what a shallow way of living, I suppose. But
it is. But that is the
it's
human behaviour. That's one of the things. I was actually doing that study while doing my postgrad in behavioural science, so I found that really interesting to all link together. So there's that side of what we do that looks into why do people do what they do, and it goes across the whole supply chain. So that's farmers right the way through to consumers, and we do testing on various different products. We follow people around shops. We talk to people in the supply chain on why they do the procurement decisions that they do, and how is it impacted by sustainability and costs? So you get very, very deep and into very specific things,
Yeah.
and then you get yanked off to another project, and you kind of have all this tacit knowledge about consumer preference for the thickness of tender stem broccoli. That is my dinner party conversation. So I don't know if that makes me a good guest or not.
It was better than what my old one was, which was about call centres. So that was a conversation killer right off the bat. That's fascinating. So how did you get into this?
There was a bottle of wine involved, as is the best decisions. And it came about because it was my mum started the business in the 90s, because my dad's a farmer. And after one too many forgetful moments where he didn't pick us up from school, she realised, I can't be in corporate marketing and have a farmer to rely on for the school pickup. So she left, started her own agency, and started working in food and farming. After a brief stint in tech, working with Cambridge tech companies in the 90s, suddenly got out of her depth very quickly, understood food and farming quite well, so went down that route. I came in, I actually ran away, wanted a big city job, marketing, London, all of that, married someone in the army, didn't end up in a city, got dragged around 10 moves in 10 years. We've been Cyprus, Bristol, all over the place. And it was while I was on mat leave with my second, the pandemic came in. We bubbled up with my parents. Mum put everyone on furlough, and she just needed somebody who understood digital comms to take a project on collagen trials online and do it at home over email. So I said, well, I'm not busy. I'm homeschooling one kid. I've got a new baby. I've got a puppy, and my husband working night shifts. How bad could it be? So decided I was
busy. That already sounds like hell.
Well, hence why the bottle of wine was involved. I think she's got me when I was vulnerable, sleep deprived, and a bit tipsy. And I said I'd do it for 3 months. And after 3 months, I apologized to my old boss and said, I just want to let you know I'm not coming back. I love doing this. And since then, I've done all my research quals. I've done my behavioural science postgrad. I just find this the most interesting place with the most interesting people to work in. And the kind of projects we're covering is, things from pesticide resistance and why do farmers choose certain seed treatments and the use of PGRs and the real technical agronomy stuff, right the way through to the best price point for a new type of breakfast cereal, and what are the motives to get people to purchase this particular cereal, and whether it's better for them, and all sorts of things like that. So there's no 2 days the same, and most projects last about 6 to 8 weeks. So right. I think if you get bored easily, it's the place to be.
I can imagine it has been a very busy year. Has it been increasingly busy? Has the political environment affected the sorts of projects you're asked to get involved in?
I don't think there was. I think the most political it's got is asking farmers what they've noticed in terms of weather changes and climate change and their propensity on who they'd vote for. So I wouldn't say no one's kind of talking about, we sort of leave what do you think about inheritance tax? What do you think to cap reform? What do you think to BPS changes to Farmers Guardian, Farmers Weekly? Because they run polls and they make news stories out of them. Where I like to think we sit is in that slightly more considered space where there's long-term change, long-term direction, and the kind of research we're doing is informing that direction. I think one thing I have noticed, and one of the reasons I set up 5 Bar Gate, is my dad's a farmer. He sends me on every survey he gets. He got 92 surveys this year and counting, all of which wanted about 15 minutes of his time. We're talking like a 30-hour commitment, completely unpaid.
Yeah.
And that's kind of goes back to the reason I set up 5 Bar Gate. I think farmers, they want to talk to people that understand their world. And I mean, everyone in the team understands or has a farming background. So we can get to the conversation that we need to quite quickly, because there's none of the not understanding the acronyms. We get it. We know what's changed. we can talk quickly about it. The other side of it is I really don't believe that when everyone else is getting paid, that farmers should be giving up their time and doing it for free.
Free, yeah.
I think we pay £1 a minute, generally speaking, plus any expenses for engaging in research. And I think that's what farmers are worth. It's, it's a senior management job, if you like. They should be paid the same as everybody else on when you look across the board at research. The problem was they're really hard to access. So the old-fashioned way of doing it was, you might be familiar with it, I would have employed a call centre and said, right, here's the cold list, work your way through it, and I need you to achieve 1.2 interviews per hour. And if we're falling behind, I need to know. But employing a call centre or even running a call centre yourself is really expensive. You've got to keep feeding the beast. You've got people that perhaps aren't as in depth and understand the sector as well, so they can't get to the insight that we need fast enough. Farmers don't trust them to talk about it. They're not, one chap said to me, it's nice to talk to somebody that actually understands what I mean when I'm talking about drilling or chain harrowing or anything else, that you know what I'm saying and I don't have to explain it. You're not some spotty-faced youth in a call centre was how he described it, which tickles me. And I think they want to have the conversations, which is what you found. They want to talk about these kind of things, but they want to talk about with somebody who can have a decent conversation on the end. And the other bit that we quite like doing is I won't tell them what other people have said throughout the interview because I don't want to bias the respondent, lead the witness, all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But at the end, we do say, have you got any questions about this project? How is it being reported? What have other people been saying to you? Because farmers they work in quite an isolated space. So seeing what other people have said and feeding that back on is a really important element to keep that feedback loop and build that trust. And I think they like that we're all a bit farmery. And we want what's best for agriculture. We're not out to trip them up or sort of
that's a very interesting. That's an interesting point that you say, because if you are setting aside that time to participate, and yes, you're recompensed for your time, but it's like being asked to survey at the end of any experience. If you are badgered for responses, NPS scores, whatever it is, and then you never actually know what your feedback is achieving. I was use the example with Net Promoter Score. It's all about the key question of whether you would recommend said service to another. And the principles of NPS would be that if you are a detractor, therefore a low score, and have got low faith in that organisation, that there needs to be a feedback loop to come back to you to sort of say, we've heard what you say, this is what we're doing about it. And that seems to be the step that everybody misses, or a lot of companies miss, but they rely on looking at their NPS score going up. So if it's gone up by 2 points, great, everybody's a winner. Well, not if you've not done anything about the detractors' feedback. And I'm certainly seeing articles that talk more about, now I've only got a short experience in this field, but it seems like there's more conversations around making collaborative decisions and involving farmers more in the direction of travel, if you like, for the industry. So I'm guessing grounded research and 5 Bar Gate is tapped into that and is generating that collaboration.
Yeah, and I think that's an important. The industry needs to adapt to an awful lot of change to get the outputs and results that are needed. So we probably don't have 40, 50 years to make a change. There's a really good talk by a chap at Nottingham University called Jack Bobo, who does a really good explanation of what the world's going to look like in the next 30 years. And it's basically, we've really got to innovate and improve food production for 30 years because the population of the globe is still in this sort of upward trajectory. In 30 years' time, provided we get there, we'll have innovated our way and producing higher yielding crops, more pest resistance, all of the things that need to happen across tech and bio and everything else, that the rest of the slope, as the population naturally decreases, is on a bit of a freewheel. We'll have the food available to people. And I think knowing that we don't have that much time, and knowing that the best way to get the outcomes we need in agriculture and get the changes happening is a co-designed approach. And in the majority of cases, that has to be farmer-led. And you can't be farmer-led if you're not talking to farmers.
Yeah.
And that's not just in the UK, that's globally. What works in principle in a lab, what works theoretically speaking in a published academic paper, the number of times it doesn't happen on the ground because of practical barriers is fascinating. But equally, there's also so much happening on farm that doesn't then get laddered up. I was chatting to a really interesting chap in Wales. He's the Welsh farmer on TikTok, if anyone wants to go to follow him, Liam. And he said that he'd just gone and got a bag of wildflower mix from the middle of Lidl down the middle aisle, and he'd used it, and he'd noticed an uptick in terms of the improvement in the field where he'd used this wildflower mix. I mean, that unless someone had spoke to him and asked specifically about it, that's going to go completely under the radar as a lived experience. It's something I see with my brother's an organic farmer. My dad's a conventional Fenland farmer. So you can imagine the kind of conversations we have around the Sunday lunch table there. But my dad he's always been environmentally sensitive and all about tree planting. But the additional things that my brother's had implementing as sort of a regen, herbal lay, mixed system type of farmer has meant that dad's incorporated some other practices, and he sees the benefit, but he also gets quite a buzz from it. You know, he's seeing more, wildlife, bird counts are higher, all that sort of thing. I think that's the bit we need to tap into, is the human side of it and the lived experience, just as much as making sure that the policy and the research that's being done applies on farm and at scale.
Yeah. So you grew up on a farm?
Yes, though I didn't have much to do with it. The only interest I had was galloping my horse on stubble fields, to be honest.
So tell me a little bit about that and your happiest memories of growing up on a farm.
Gosh, well, it's definitely galloping on stubble fields. I mean, I think the childhood my brother and I had on the farm, Mum was working and growing the business, Dad was farming. We had a couple of nannies, the sort of kids from the teenagers from the village that would come and look after us when we were younger. And we ran wild, and it was just, I'd go out walking the dogs for hours. We'd go camping. We'd go swimming in rivers, all the kind of things I'd never let my children do. Much too dangerous. But that was the 90s for you. I think some of my favorite memories now it's quite funny because the stories Mum and Dad told us to keep us safe on the farm. Dad told us that there was the great white pike in the river and we mustn't go in because it'll like eat your toes and eat your fingers, to keep us out of the river. And I had this fear of the fan house and getting stuck down one of the grain tunnels.
Did he have a particular horror story to keep you out of there?
All sorts of stories to keep us out of trouble about, and there was a story about there were some kids playing in the wheat and the combine didn't see them and they lost all their arms and legs to keep us out of the field when he was combining. And it really works. Like even now I still get like heart palpitations being near the header.
Parents, they fuck you up, don't they?
Yeah. But I mean, it worked.
It's just kept you alive.
Yeah. So even like the main road near their house, I'll still get like fear crossing the road, even though I'm a grown up.
She says with a great big smile on her face.
Yeah. But happiest. It was such.
I had a lot of freedom.
The freedom, and I think the risk taking. And I've read enough books about raising kids now because I wanted my own kids to be happy, healthy kids. And there's a great book called Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt, I think. Anyway, it'll be on Amazon.
You'll find it.
Yeah, and it's all about we wrap kids up too much and they're not encouraged to take risks. Couple that with social media, anxiety, and you've got like a perfect storm of mental health problems in children. So wherever I can, I throw the kids at the grandparents. Dad's still semi-farming, and they just run free. It's the fen. You can see how far they go.
So, for coming back to what you're doing in your day to day, then, how many people do work in the company? What's the sort of size of
So
business?
there'll be 6 of us come January. We're taking on a new lady who's actually an agronomist who fancies a change. So I thought that's perfect. She can do all the real techie croppy projects for me. But we also have a kind of a pool of freelancers that we draw in on. For what we do, you don't actually need that many people. A lot of it is, I think the biggest the company got was about 16 people at any one time. And that's ebbed and flowed depending on demands as we move through the 90s, noughties and onwards. A lot of the time now, it's based on surveys and interviews, particularly with farmers, focus groups. You don't need many people for that. You just need people who are really good at what they do, automated systems. And that's really where the 5-bar gate community comes in. I don't need to run a big call center. We just need someone who's really good at designing surveys and really good at analyzing data. And whereas before farmers would get cold called, which they'll be in the middle of something, they don't want to talk to
Yeah,
you,
yeah,
especially not when they're not getting paid for it. Whereas now, we've got this kind of group of farmers it's about 2,000 of them, who are ready and willing to take part in research. And if there's a research opportunity for dairy farmers, I put it out to our dairy farmers and they say, yes, I'd be interested. We then choose the right mix of people, because obviously you don't want all the big guys robotic milking and none of the little guys. You want a nice mix. So we'll sort of pick those and pay them 100 quid to do an interview. Depending on how long the time takes, they just get a link, they book in, they can reschedule if something comes up. I had one chap burst a vein or something, was in A&E, so he couldn't make the meeting. That's fine, just reschedule. I don't expect you to join from A&E. And it just makes the whole process is just much more streamlined. So yeah,
and how do you keep up to date with what's going on? Is it a case of you're feeding your brain from attending events, or a mixture of that and networking online?
I think it's a mix. I'm really lucky because I get to see some of the stuff that's happening before it's happened. So I've literally just come off the call with a chap today who's set up, it's like a think tank of Nuffield scholars, and asked if I could do something for them down the line on farmer opinion. But it's looking at like soil scientists and the nutritional profile of what animals are eating, and then what the output of that is in sort of key areas around beef, dairy and oats. So I get to hear about stuff before it hits. Obviously,
Yeah,
I read Farmers Weekly, Farmers Guardian. I think Abby and Liv would be upset if I didn't say that. A lot of the opinion pieces, though, I'm finding being on TikTok and Instagram and just following some really key voices who are kind of telling it as it is on their farm gives me a lot of insight to be able to apply. Okay, that's what I'm looking at that's going to happen in 5 years' time because we're researching it. This
yeah,
is what's the here and now. It's big enough to be reported on in the press. And then this is like the micro environment on farm with individual farmers. And you get that with social media. And the events really kind of join that whole ecosystem together because it's a small industry comparatively, UK farming. You walk down the stands at cereals or Llama or crop tech, whatever it might be, and you see people and you have that human, you just can't beat that human. Oh, what are you working on? No, we're doing this. Oh, what about this? And how did that play out? What were you doing last year and catching up on it? And I
yeah.
think agriculture really needs to keep that human to human piece. I think that's what makes it a special industry. And I think everyone else has kind of gone out and done the big machine stuff and, computers and tech and remote working and everything else. And everyone's coming back round and it's kind of, you feel like agriculture's there going, yeah, we know that. It is all about the people. The culture drives it.
Yeah. That's interesting what you say about the events. I'm up in North Yorkshire, so looking at what's available around here, obviously is fairly dominated by Yorkshire Agricultural Society and things like that, which are fantastic events. They put on a lot of stuff. But looking further afield at events at the moment, considering which ones are useful for me to go to that don't involve, a 6-hour drive. So I am getting to understand which of the venues where most people are. I'm always, because I've come from an industry where there are lots of thought leadership type events, I sort of have got a bit of an allergy towards some of them. Do you know what I mean? And someone mentioned it the other week. It's like the minute you spot a lanyard, you're a little bit on the back foot. But yeah, of the ones I've attended so far, for me, it's a completely different vibe. Maybe it's because I'm now just more engaged in a new topic, a new area, and I'm excited about it, and so I'm listening harder, or whether they are just filled with people with more genuine perspectives and real world experiences to talk about. So it's good to know who's out there, and you might not want to name individuals, but who are your sort of favourites in the industry? Who do you like to read or can listen to all day? Your heroes?
I think it depends on what itch I'm trying to scratch. I think all the normal farmer influencers, Ollie, Becca Wilson. There's a couple of the new ones. Will Murray, who's not actually called Will Murray. I found that out the other day when I was chatting to him. Liam over in Wales, Gareth. I think they all give really interesting boots on the ground perspectives. If I want to understand a bit more about the intersection of farms and like the more technical businessy stuff, there's a couple of people I go to understand that. We've had a few projects in horticulture. So Kelly at the Fresh Produce Consortium and Verian Bliss, who's now chair of the Fresh Produce in Red Tractor. They're kind of my go-to, pick up the phone. Hey, is this a thing in this sector or not? A couple of vets, a couple of sort of academics that I pick the phone up to, a few nutritionists, a few comms experts. I think it's really, my work gets me involved with a lot of them because I interview them about various different things that come up. There's a whole host of technical people at ADAS that if I've got a question, says Marcus, Rosie, they sort of, you kind of sit there and go, okay, this is what I need to know more about. Let's cherry pick those people that I know understand not just what's going on the ground, but the wider picture. Because I think if you just listen to what's happening on farm, you don't really understand the policy, politics, drivers, commercial stuff that is driving some of that. Just a case in point, I ended up having to do a whole bunch of interviews with dairy farmers this month, right after the milk price had dropped. And it's kind of interesting listening to what they're saying and their perceptions of trends. So, they were saying, people aren't drinking as much milk, they're not eating as much dairy. And yes, that's true. But working further up the supply chain, I'm also seeing that we're putting more palm oil into, and there's more UPFs that aren't requiring milk and butter and all the normal baked ambient good stuff. It's palm oil because it's cheaper, it's shelf stable, it's semi-solid, it works. I mean, your all butter mince pies will have quite a lot of palm oil in them if you've bought them from a supermarket. So that's the big driver. And I'm kind of, it's a really nice joining the dots and kind of going, if that, then that. And that all works within that triangle I said at the beginning.
Yeah.
And you get to see a lot of things. I'm not technical enough to know the intricacies of how it all joins up, but it puts you at almost like the crossroads of stuff.
Yeah. I like the way you think, and I said that to you when we first met, that I like your writing. Do you ever switch off, or what do you do to switch off?
I think that's so. I rode a lot of the kid because there's not much else to do on a farm before the invention of iPads, and you've only got 4 telly channels because mum and dad wouldn't pay for Sky. So I had a pony and I rode a lot then. Didn't ride while I was sort of moving around, but now back into riding. And for me, my brain doesn't stop. I'll usually have a podcast going on in my ear at any one time if I'm cleaning or driving anywhere. But I've got a bit of a tricky horse. She's not tricky in the sense of she's dangerous. She's just, you can't switch off that much and just pootle along with your feet out the stirrups with her. So it's really nice to have my brain a little bit busy and my hands a little bit busy, and just that busy enough to not be in work mode.
Yeah.
So for me, that's my switch off. The other one is walking the dogs. I cannot be walking the dogs without having a chat. And I literally work through my call list of friends. The kids aren't around to bug me. I can walk off into the countryside and I think it's more like an efficiency thing. I feel like I'm walking the dogs, I'm getting a job done, and I can catch up with friends.
Yeah.
Same if I'm driving a long distance. I think they get a bit annoyed with me. If they don't answer, it's like, oh, fine, I'll go to the next person. Then they try and call back, and then they didn't get me. I'm sorry, you missed your slot.
Yeah. Goodness me. Do you ever switch what does a perfect holiday look like for you?
Oh,
I hope you're going to say like nothing and chilled out on a beach. But there'll be a broad 5.
We do, now the kids are a bit older, we do sort of a bit more action-y, adventure-y holidays. Although the last one I did, I fell down a hole and broke my ankle, which put me out of action for a while. And I don't recommend hobbling around cereals in a boot and crutches. It was awful. Their disabled access is not disabled access. So we're doing a bit more adventure-y stuff with kids, a bit more sort of exciting. You know, we take them out paddleboarding and stuff like that. Anywhere where I can't take my phone with me, ideally, or get my phone out, is a good switch off. I always love Christmas because nobody works at Christmas. Whereas if you take time off over the summer holidays, your inbox doesn't stop. If you run your own business, your inbox is never going to stop.
Yeah.
You can delegate out, you can put your out office on, but if something juicy came in when I was on holiday last summer and I just couldn't resist. I had to write the proposal. Luckily, I had my laptop because I was actually finishing my dissertation for my postgrad. Too much work, not enough time put aside to finish that. I had to do the last couple of weeks in a bit of a hurry. But yeah, this proposal came in. I was like, oh, I can't not. That sounds so good. And no one else would have been able to pick it up and write it. So
yeah. Well, I can see by the smile across your face, it's like your passion for the industry is immense. What's your hope for next year?
I'd like to keep grounded research on the trajectory it's on. We're just starting to get some, I think the last year we've been able to work really well with how 5-bar gate works. So we've invested quite a lot in a new platform to make it easier to get hold of the right farmers for the right project at the right time. Also close that feedback loop. So we've got more two-way options that are coming up. We're working with, I think it's the clients that really make it and the questions they have. And we've got some really interesting stuff that, projects that are coming up where it really is that 3-way triangle looking at those, but also the sort of just general, what are we doing that's supporting agriculture? That's, for me, that's a really key one. I get asked a lot, surely if you care about farmers this much, it makes your research biased. And my pushback is no, because we structure the research in that you can't really have bias. All the samples are carefully planned, the methodology is carefully, we follow research rigor, but I will get you farmers talk to me and my team that wouldn't talk to anybody else. So you're probably getting a broader spectrum of what's going on, not just a self-selecting bunch of farmers who are the ones who have the time to answer the cold calls and can spare half an hour to talk to researchers in call centres about stuff that the researchers in call centres don't care about. So I think for me, it's It's where can we make stuff better for the sort of food production industry. And I like projects where there's a real tangible impact, or you disprove a hypothesis, or someone says, oh, farmers are dot dot dot, and they have some preconceived opinion about whether they're reticent to take up new ideas or resistant to technology. And I'm kind of thinking, I just spoke to a farmer who's integrated his soil science and carbon measurements with ChatGPT as a back-end integration, and is telling me about how he puts in his latitude and longitude and takes photos of crops, and then uses it like an agronomist. That is very technical.
There's
there's a chap in Northern Ireland who's constantly doing like little inventions on his farm. What is it? Is it Farm Theory? Andrew? Yeah, I think it's Farm Theory. Andrew. He's a really interesting one to follow. He's got some very strong opinions, but just showing like innovation on farm, and showing like what an amazing bunch of people farmers are. I mean, the kind of challenges they're up against, it's not just the standard weather and the risk and the problems there. It's, layer in policy, layer in prices, layer in consumer trends, climate change, access to funds and capital. You've kind of got this amazing group of people that, they're the ones I want with me in the shield wall, so to speak. They're the ones who are going to get it done. So, they're a great bunch.
It's great to hear from you, and I will follow what's going on in the business with a lot of interest. As I say, I've got a long flight coming up. I'm going to be downloading a bunch of information so that I can read 600-page reports, and I shall critique them and let you know.
Oh, just stick with the summary. If you want a summary of anything we do, it's all on our news and views page.
No, I probably won't. I'll probably turn off after about half an hour and watch a movie. But thanks ever so much for agreeing to be with me.
Thank you for asking questions. It's nice to be, it's nice that I don't have to think on the spot and ask the questions to somebody else for a change.
I don't know what's harder, asking the questions or answering them, but
get a script. I always work for a script.
But yeah, thanks so much. But at the time at which people are listening to this, it will be into the new year. But for here and now, we're in the middle of December. So really hope you and your family have a fabulous Christmas, and you get some downtime, all right?
Well, yeah, you too, Bev. And it's, all guns blazing for 2026. Let's chill out, get the mulled wine on the go.
Yeah, there you go.
Homemade mince pies, because no one likes palm oil pies.
Lovely. All right.
Thanks
Take care.
so much.
Thanks a lot, Claire.
For having me. Bye.
Thanks to Claire for giving us a brilliant look into the world of research and showing how consumers, retailers, but most importantly farmers, all have a part to play in shaping the future of farming. If you'd like to find out more about the work that Grounded Research do, check out their website at groundedresearch.co.uk. And as always, if you've enjoyed today's episode, I'd love to hear from you with a like or a share or a comment. With episodes now being published weekly, why not subscribe to the channel wherever you get your podcasts? And if you've got any requests or suggestions, let me know in the comments, or you can email me on info@pasture-bedtime.co.uk. That's all for today. If it is past your bedtime, well, perhaps it's time to turn in. Thanks for listening. Until next time.